in the next 10 to 15 minutes, give you an introduction to the DCC's programme of engagement with individual institutions, individual universities in the UK. And I'll just start with some context and look at the process itself. Let's talk a little bit about how it's been more than just introducing RDM, research data management. It's about transformation within institutions, and then finally to look at some of the outcomes and future outlook. And the whole programme really is an extension of the DCC's core mission, which is to help build capacity and capability within institutions in their management of research data. It is not an adjunct, it is core to our business. It really started in 2011, which I called a year of mandates and modernisation. We had the Research Council UK Common Principles on Research Data Policy, which principally was talking about data being a public asset. The Economic Social Research Council introduced a requirement for data management plans to be submitted with grant proposals. And then, quite startlingly, the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council brought out its policy framework on research data, which galvanised the whole community by setting out 9 principles, 9 expectations which it was expected would be met, and that all institutions in receipt of funding from the EPSRC should have a 3-year roadmap in place, starting from May 2012, and by May 2015 they should have implemented that roadmap. So lots and lots of policy activity. The Higher Education Funding Council for England, HEFI, also had its Universities Modernisation Fund. Now, this was meant to help universities deal with the increasing numbers of undergraduates, but some of that funding was given to the DCC to undertake its engagement programme. And the first programme involved 21 universities. As you can see, this is quite a mixed group. We had ancient universities, those that have been around for about 500 years, up to those that have been on the go for a couple of decades. So it was a very mixed group, which gave us the opportunity to see the differences in the way they applied themselves to RDM. Really, the whole process of engaging with them was, as I've already mentioned, something to do with business process redesign. It was imperative that there was input from the researchers themselves, from the senior management of universities, and from the research support groups, which typically was IT, library, the research office, but also could include records management and others. And what this meant was that we were seeing some very unfamiliar collaborations. These were groups that generally hadn't worked together before, were having to sort out their relationships. There was an essential need for some drive from the top, for authority, or else the thing would just have drifted. And the actual programs really needed to focus on desirability and achievability. Otherwise, these projects would have come to an end, and people would say it wasn't that good, but there would have been no sustainability. They had to be of meaning to the university. So these were typical teams. 50% of them did have senior academic champions, and we could note that most of these were the ones that have been most successful. The actual team leaders for the institutional teams tended predominantly to be from the library, 8 were from the research office and 2 from IT. Although major support within those teams and surrounding those clusters came from the library and IT. Around this, the DCC provided guidance, expert knowledge, and facilitated the programme. We weren't owners of these projects. We were there to give them momentum and guidance. The ownership very much had to be with the institutions themselves. The tools we used were very familiar. We didn't have time to experiment, although some of these tools have been modified as a consequence of the engagements. We would typically start with a data asset framework to actually survey the situation as is, to interview staff, to investigate data holdings. We could then move on to use cardio, which actually helped build a consensus about what should be done next. And DMP Online has been quite proven. We were using this in many of the instances to provide customized institutional templates. Typical framework, we were offering 60 days free effort. And in most cases, it started with making the case, including advocacy with the senior managers. we would then move on through assessing needs. I talked about the tools we would use, and eventually developing support and services, particularly in terms of providing guidance and training. Another way of looking at it, they generally fell into 4 phases: initiating change by working with the steering group, providing a roadmap for the project, diagnosing data practices, which included awareness raising, re-engineering roles through audits, through data clinics, sometimes one-to-one, sometimes with groups, and providing training, and then finally introducing sustainable services. These will be built around proper business plans and things like customized DMP, which I'll come back to again. This series of engagements really has worked very much as a group of case studies, and these are typical observations. We've found, although there are some universities that are really forging ahead, most of them are in the early stages of just scoping their needs for research data management and looking for benchmarks. Where should they go? How far should they go? What should they include? Few have got the components in place for actually developing services. They are looking at what they have on site, but what else, what additional are they going to need? And the biggest impetus for doing anything at all is coming from funder expectations. It's not because people think RDM is a good thing to do, although that is there, but the biggest impetus is from actually compliance with funders and also with legislation. We found some confusion over the sequence of producing strategies, plans and policies. Some institutions immediately embark on producing a policy without having a strategy. The policy is not linked to where they want to get to, and this has to be clarified when we work with them. And finally, the gulf between early adopters and late entrants is widening, which is having a major impact on the DCC and what we're going to do next in terms of sustaining and supporting a community that is lengthening in its breadth of understanding. Major foci for the activities. Roadmap design was undertaken in 7 of the institutions, which is underlines the focus on EPSE requirements. Most of them we were using DCC tools, and they have embarked on using these tools themselves. We introduced them, provided training, and they then often took these away to work themselves. Guidance and training has been very, very key. In lots of instances, data management was seen as fairly mysterious. We therefore have to very much work with short, simple guidance and use resources that we are familiar with applying, such as DC 101. Focusing on sustainability. So we've looked at training postgraduate students so that the whole idea of research data management becomes embedded within the culture from the beginning, and in the reskilling of professional and support staff so that they can transition from being librarians to data managers, for example. They've been looking for some quick wins. Data management planning is now required by 6 of the 7 research councils, so there has been a focus on creating and rebranding versions of data management planning tools. And the other focus has been on storage. We've been asked very much for advice on which is the best way for dealing with data storage, which are the best tools to use, and we've been asked to put institutions in touch with those who are supplying such services. So in summary, we have 19 plans of action being delivered out of the 21 institutions. Some HEIs prioritised the allocation of resources, others did not. There's been a real spectrum of difference between their approach. We found that new universities have been the most agile. They've had less baggage to take with them. And in others, there has been major cultural drag, which is why we had 19 plans out of 21, because we had to cease activity with 2 institutions, which was just taking too long to get off the ground. As I've mentioned, the main driver is compliance and risk avoidance. Training has been the key, and we're seeing an increase in cross-collaboration. One of the institutional activities was engagements was with Sheffield. We've now expanded that. We're working with the White Rose Group, the White Rose Consortium, which is Sheffield, Leeds and New York. and I think this is going to increase in future. Next steps, we are realigning our programme. We're no longer going to offer 60-day engagements. We will provide a menu of specific activities from which universities can select, and we will then go in to work on those to deliver those within particular timescales, and very much a focus on the HEIs being required to demonstrate their commitment. Sometimes it has not been forthcoming. That's me done. Thank you.